Do you have a difficult time finding and keeping high-quality volunteers? Is the same 20% of your church doing 80% of the work? It doesn't have to be this way. Most people want to be a part of a growing organization. They want to be a part of a winning team and they want to make a difference. But too often, we're so short-handed on volunteers that we rush to onboard them to get on to the next ones. And guys, this is a huge mistake that we make. It's the root cause of not raising up the high-quality volunteers that we all really need and desire. We're going to give you a simple 4-step process to onboard and train volunteers that has been proven to be successful.
Welcome to the Small Town Big Church Leadership Podcast, a place for pastors, church leaders, and volunteers to grow themselves and the local church. We're pastors Brad and Misti Helton, church planters in rural America. In our last episode, we brought you part 1 of onboarding volunteers. Why having a job description is a non-negotiable. And today we're going to pick up with part 2 and give you 4 super simple steps to onboarding and training your volunteers. If you missed part 1, we would highly encourage you to go back and listen to it first so that you will be up to speed. All right? So when you think about what it takes to effectively train others, who comes to mind as being the ultimate trainer?
Jesus,
right? Jesus was by far, I think you'll agree, the greatest leader who has ever graced the earth. Yeah. Jesus successfully trained a group of disciples before he left this world. Yeah. I say successfully. You know, how do we really know that? Well, the ones he trained and taught went on to eventually change the entire world, right? This was no small task. It took time. It took persistence. But eventually, the time and the effort he poured into a handful of his volunteers made traction. Yeah. And thus today we have what is called the local church. That's right. And it is alive. It's growing rapidly. It's multiplying daily all over the world. And guess what? It cannot be stopped.
That's right.
Now that's leadership, to be able to pull something off like that.
So you have to ask yourself, why didn't Jesus just give those disciples the Great Commission, which was really the marching orders for his followers? We see it in Matthew 28, 19 through 20. Why didn't he give it to them in the first few weeks or even the first few months of training?
Good question.
You know, he doesn't give it for 3 years. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you why he didn't. Because they weren't ready.
That's good.
He needed to train them properly so that they would be able to effectively execute the mission he would eventually give them. They weren't ready to be released. So what needed to happen, you ask yourself, before each of those recruits would have been ready to go? Well, let's think about it. What did Jesus' training system really look like?
That's good.
We believe in really studying the Word that there were 4 steps that we identify when evaluating Jesus' method of training.
So we're going to go through this line of thought with you and kind of pick it apart and show you what we have pulled from when it comes to the way that Jesus made leaders and trained them.
Right.
The first thing that he had to do was tell them or teach them about the kingdom. We see this all through the Gospels. The second thing that Jesus had to do was show them what the kingdom looked like in action. He had to show them what it looked like when the kingdom was alive in someone's heart.
Right.
Then he had to let them try it themselves. Remember, when he sent them out, think about this. Yeah. He sent them all out, and they had to put into practice what he had told them and showed them. Did they always get it right? No. No, they didn't. But Jesus had to bring correction. He had to bring a realignment during this phase of training. But eventually there came a point where they were ready to move on to the 4th and final step. They were ready to be released and actually do what he had taught them how to do.
So let's go through this in order. There's 4 steps. Tell, show, try, and do. What would this look like if implemented into an onboarding system for newly recruited volunteers?
For church.
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is what our training system actually looks like here at Mountain Movers. So we want to kind of walk you through this process and how we have seen it work so well here in our local church.
Okay, so let's look at step 1, tell. The first part of telling is found in the written job description, or what I call the training sheet, that we covered in our last video. This is all in writing so that you can go back to see what's expected of the volunteer. The volunteer can go back and see for himself or herself what's expected. The second part to this step is all verbal. Whoever's conducting the training for this volunteer gives verbal training and explanation of the job description for the particular position that the volunteer is being trained for.
Right. So let's just help you understand just an example. So let's say, Brad, you're new and you've been at the church a little while. You want to get involved serving, right? So you would go on, you jump on our app or our website, and you would just click, want to volunteer, basically. And you'd fill out this form, and once that form is filled out, the office receives it, right? And then we schedule a time to actually meet with you. So we would email you that week that written guideline training sheet. And then a trainer would actually meet with you.
Yeah. So when do you think is the best time to meet with people, would you say?
We do it all on Sunday morning. Now,
for us,
I realize
that's proven to be the best time.
Yes.
Because we're already here.
We're all here, right? Every team lead over every team is here. We actually do 3 services. So we use training times at one of the services that they're not attending.
Correct.
Okay? So in that moment, you would have already read, we hope, that guideline training sheet.
Yeah,
and so then the trainer literally is just asking you like, hey, Brad, like we're so excited that you want to serve with us. Now, I emailed you the training sheet. Did you have a chance to go over that?
Yeah.
And if you did, I just want to highlight a few of the things that are the most important. Okay, so that's your opportunity. Those really big things that you might need to highlight, okay? And then to say, did you have any questions? All right. At that point, they should have a pretty clear understanding of the position they've applied for, right? The trainer is going to have a really good idea as to whether this is a good fit, because now we've had a one-on-one conversation, okay? And so at that moment, either you're going to realize, like you, Brad, might say, this is actually
not what I thought.
Not what I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the best place for me, and then you can help redirect them to a new place. Or you say, I'm excited and ready to go to the next
Cannot wait to jump
step.
in. Yeah.
Okay? The second step in the process is show. And this one is really important. This is where the new recruit will shadow another volunteer as they perform the task the new volunteer is being recruited for. So choosing the right person to demonstrate the duty is really
huge,
really important. And whatever they see demonstrated is how they're actually going to perform it themselves. So have them shadow someone on the team who not only can demonstrate the task at hand according to the expectations for that position, right? Those guidelines, but this person also has got to have the ability to clearly explain everything that is required.
Some people just aren't good at explaining things.
No. So
I'm not.
Really need to be very selective in who you're using as your trainer. So, for example, Brad, if you are now being onboarded, let's just say you're going to onboard to our coffee shop, okay, the move.
Oh, yeah. Put me in the coffee
Yeah,
shop.
right? Okay, so you would have already gone through that guideline training sheet with a team lead.
Right.
Now it's time for step 2 to shadow.
Right.
So you would come in, first services when we do those for our coffee shop, and you would literally stand next to a person who's actually doing the job. So maybe you're going to stand next to the dude making the espressos. And they're going to verbally walk you through exactly how to do it. You're not going to do it. They're just talking you through it, okay?
Okay, so step 3 is try. This step comes into play once there's an agreed upon confidence that the volunteer is ready to try it. You'll know you've arrived when the volunteer can verbally explain the process to you and feels confident to try it on their own. The other side of the try step, if you will, is watching them perform the task at hand and offering encouragement and constructive feedback until you feel that they're ready for the next step.
And that brings us to step 4. Okay, so tell, show, try. Number 4 is do. This is when we release that volunteer to do it on their own. They don't have a trainer next to them. They are released. They're doing it on their own. Now, obviously, they have a team lead.
Right.
So if they have any problems, if they forget something, there's captains in place. There's a team lead. They're not like soloing without anybody around them. But it's an opportunity now for them to do it on their own.
I think this is the big mistake that we've seen so many churches make throughout the years. Many churches, especially rural churches,
yes,
you don't have the luxury of having a ton of volunteers maybe available to you. So a warm body is a very good option for a lot of church leaders.
Right.
The problem with this is if you don't take the time to properly train and you just throw somebody into a position and you skip, tell, show, try, and you just let them do it, you're going to end up with a circumstance close to what we experienced. I remember years ago, this just came to my mind. We were visiting a church during our internship, and this woman was leading the kids' church, okay? And she was sitting in a chair, and she had the curriculum, and she was reading it, and she spent 50% of the time getting onto the kids because they were just completely unruly, out of control.
Right.
They were not engaged. They weren't growing. They weren't hardly getting anything out of what she was saying because she hadn't been trained. It doesn't mean she didn't have the potential to do a great job as a kids worker.
Yeah.
But she really had not been trained properly because she did not know how to get the children to engage. She didn't know how to keep their attention. She didn't know how to make it fun and interactive. And so many times churches don't take the time, make the time to train people properly, tell them how to do it, show them how to do it with a good example, let them try it on their own, and then give positive, constructive feedback until they're ready until confidently, I can leave the room and they are going to be golden. They're going to be able to do this job without me even being in the room. I feel very, very confident they're ready to do it. If you'll make, it takes longer.
It does.
It takes longer.
You really have to have patience, but if you remember what we started with, we are talking about raising up high quality volunteers who will last.
Yeah, that's why you said in the very beginning, Jesus, it was 3 years before he gave them their job description.
Yes, and when you read the New Testament,
they weren't ready.
You just see over and over and over how he taught them and he trained them and he was helping them to try it while he was still here, and he had the ability to bring some correction
and realignment along the way.
But here's the other thing. Through that process, you are going to realize whether or not this is a good fit.
Right.
So in the case of the kids worker, if you would have been walking alongside of her, you might have realized this is not the best fit for her. Right? Because at the end of the day, guys, we were there observing. I felt so bad
horrible
for
the lady. I felt horrible for the kids.
I did too. I thought nobody wants to be here.
Nobody.
Not the kids and not the volunteers.
And not me.
Right? And not me. It was awful. So the fact is, as leaders, guys, it is our responsibility to help train those volunteers properly, place them properly, right? Take the time so that you will have those high quality volunteers who want to serve, who enjoy using the gifts God gave them because he gave us all different gifts, and you will have some volunteers that will last for the long haul.
And you might say to yourself, well, it's easy for you guys to say you have a big church in a small town and you've got all these volunteers, you have all these resources. It's easy to be able to have a good quality trainer that can teach people how to serve in their particular position.
Right.
Well, guess what?
It
wasn't always that way. And we planted our church with one couple.
That's right.
And grew it, and God blessed it. And I just want to tell you, we are living in a very modern era with a thing called the internet. And there's a thing called YouTube, and there are podcasts, and there's different training systems out there that you can utilize. Even if you are a very small rural church with very limited resources, there are tons of training videos for every volunteer position in the church you can possibly imagine. I imagine as time goes by, we will offer those training videos for each of those positions. But in the meantime, the information is out there. Just utilize the resources that are available online and train your volunteers and spend the time, invest in them until they are ready to be released. Do it right, and you'll be glad you did.
It is possible. We know we started with nothing. So we want to just encourage you, whether you are a small rural church or you're a mega church right now, we all need high quality volunteers, and it takes that process. Tell, show, try, do.
We hope you've enjoyed today's talk. We hope that it's been very, very beneficial. Again, you can watch this on YouTube or you can listen to it on our podcast, Small Town Big Church Leadership Podcast. God bless. We'll see you next time.